It's called a lance. Hello?
Hello, and welcome to It's Called a Lance. Another episode hosted by me, Hauntie. Hooray! I've destroyed the other two. Oh, no, never mind. There they are. Okay. I am joined today by our friends Austin, co-host. Say
Hi.
hello. And
I've been trapped and imprisoned in this blank void. Please save me.
no. And our dear friend, William SRD.
Or, as I'm also known, the Forest Master.
Oh, yes, okay.
It was me. I was the Forest Master. We left everyone on a cliffhanger last time, and if you kept reading, you found out that it was me who was the Forest Master.
It was really surprising reading about William in this book that was written before he was alive. It blew my mind.
I was
need to understand, Austin. Exactly. Margaret Wise is really good at foreshadowing, okay? There is foreshadowing all throughout the books. She foreshadowed Will. Don't be surprised.
Here I was, shocked and amazed.
Yes, and now that you've expressed your shock and amazement at the incredible literary powers of Margaret Weiss, it is time for the customary synopsis. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dark forces are stirring in Krynn. As the companions press forward, the Forest Master, William SRD, a fabled unicorn, or perhaps some sort of demigod, reveals their path and their purpose, directing them to seek the lost and ruined city of Xak Tsaroth. The heroes are given the aid of a herd of Pegasai, who carry them to their destination, taking them far from the darkened wood and its very equestrian theming, and ever closer to Xak Tsaroth and all it holds. But adventures are never so simple. The village of Quishu, home to Goldmoon and Riverwind, is found to have been destroyed by a fire hot enough to melt stone, and an army cruel enough to punish mercy even among its own. An army led by someone named Verminard. Without survivors in sight, the companions turn toward the nearby ancient ruins they were told to find. The ancient ruins of Xak Tsaroth. After falling to an ambush laid for them by the Draconians, the heroes eventually discover the ancient city in the swamp. Unfortunately, though it fell long ago, lost and forgotten to all but the most educated people of Ansalon, I'm looking at you, Raceland, the secrets of the gods that are hidden there are being guarded by the Draconians and the terrible monster who seems to rule them. Through enchanted forests, ruined villages, and treacherous swamps, danger follows at every turn. Old rivalries between companions spark again as the courage of the party is tested at every turn of a journey that only reaches its true start at a place where unimaginable horrors rise from the depths. Death on black wings. As hope is shattered and reforged into faith, one question lingers in darkness. What power lies hidden in the ruins of Xak Tsaroth? There we go. That's the synopsis.
There you go.
What'd you guys think of the book? What'd you guys think of the chapters? 11 through 16.
Pretty good. I liked it. I think podcast
okay.
over.
We can end the episode here. Great. Yeah, it was good.
Sweet.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Good job.
No, this was definitely out of them all. Speaking in generally, not about the first chapter 11, but in general, this was definitely like so much happened in these chapters.
Yeah.
Like we jumped so many
like
places.
a mile a minute.
Yeah, this next set of chapters that we assign is going to be much more like focused. It's like in one place doing one thing, but we covered a lot of ground in these chapters.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like we've definitely it's been rising action the whole, right? If you like the 3-act structure, it's been the rising action for like a while now. And now I think we've really got like actual action where there's suddenly like a sense that the fights and everything have stakes and bad stuff can actually happen to the heroes.
It's true.
Yeah.
It can and it does.
It sure as hell did.
It sure, yes, it does. So let's get into the individual chapters. Starting with chapter 11. Chapter 11, of course, was where we encounter the Forest Master, a beautiful unicorn who rules the forest. What do we think of the chapter?
Right away, I mean, obviously the Forest Master was a pretty simple, wise wood character, a bit of a stock character, but performed the role well. But the thing that I really like to kind of, or I kind of liked as an added complication of the meeting with the Forest Master is, unlike the kind of scenes where, this was kind of a Rivendell scene in a way, if that makes sense.
I think so.
And unlike when the Fellowship's in Rivendell, we get some D&D antics going on here. We get some party banter where Caramon's like so worried he's too big for his chair, and I like that.
Yeah. Can definitely see players like goofing around with the scene, trying to break the tension that the dungeon master is desperately trying to create.
Yeah, players would never do something like that. Break tension? What?
Never. Especially if the introduction is a unicorn.
Or a sword stallion, as I would call them, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, what's that? I just read the books, but I've forgotten. Is the unicorn is a woman, right?
I mean, probably. I don't know about a woman. I think so.
I don't know if
she can transform into a woman, but she is a woman unicorn.
But she has a sword coming from her face, and that's pretty rad, at least according to me.
True. And, I mean, she may still be a stallion. Who knows? What with those centaurs and everybody? Maybe who knows what gets down in Darkenwood Wood when the peoples of the world are gone.
We to judge a truly ancient forest creature,
right?
I mean, that's true.
Even the great Huma laid the Dragonlance at her feet. I mean, come on. She said so herself at the start of the chapter. Giving us a bit of insight into, I think, her importance, not just in the narrative moment, but also it kind of gives her a greater importance in the scale of the world, right? She'd been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Makes me kind of, yeah, right? Like, I kind of wonder, like, is she meant to be like a proper unicorn, right? Like that you would just find in a D&D game? Because to me, she's always felt a bit more like a demigod,
I would agree. She strikes to me as a demigod who just happens to take the guise of a unicorn that week.
I don't have strong enough memories of unicorns in Dragonlance to remember if, like, that's just, like, the power scaling of unicorns in Dragonlance. Is there all kind of demigods? I think that's kind of neat, if so.
My understanding, I mean, I've never encountered in any of the stories from Dragonlance a unicorn other than the Forest Master. And I think the Forest Master, I would have to go back through my second edition stuff, but I think the Forest Master actually has their own monster manual entry, specifically for the Dragonlance monster manual stuff.
If you're in the comments, or if you're listening to this and you feel like digging through old books to find more details about the Forest Master, please do and comment it down below.
Yeah, because I actually have a lot of, I feel like this character kind of got glossed over when I first read these books as like a teenager. But like reading it now, I have so many more questions because I'm like, was the Forest Master, because they're drawing this connection with the Forest Master and Huma Dragonbane as well, and Sturm is there, of course, and he was following the White Stag, so now, just like Huma did, and so now I'm like, is the White Stag just like another spiritual presence in the woods? Like, is this another servant of the Forest Master, where they're like, see those dudes over there, bring them to me? Or is it like, was it the Forest Master? Like, is that just another form that they take, right? To sort of bring people into their domain. I have questions that have no answers. Unless we get Margaret Wise to guest on the show. Please.
We also get the Forest Master kind of, because it's been like in retrospect, when you look at the story so far, it has been in retrospect somewhat aimless, where they're like, do we go to Haven? Should we split up? I don't know. I guess we're just kind of walking for now until we figure out what to do. And then the Forest Master is like, I know what you should do. You should turn around and go the entire opposite way of where you were going. Go that way. Goodbye.
Also a good Dungeon Master moment.
Yeah.
They're like, ooh, a hex crawl. You guys were not ready for for just having an open map to go in any direction, huh?
There's a city that way. I guess we should go there.
Maybe
and then they see the players
class.
like, they're like, it's 2 days away. And then the players are like, God damn it, because like going on a hex crawl that far is probably a long time for play. They're like, we're never gonna get there. And then like sensing the discouragement, the game master's like, suddenly Pegasus fly down from the sky and promise to carry you all the way.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
It was a very good scene. It was very true to the game.
The flying was the Pegasus stuff. The flying, was that end of chapter 11 or start of chapter 12?
It was the start of chapter 12.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll cover that in a second then.
Yes. But yeah, there was just a lot of neat stuff. And in chapter 11, we also learned some other details from the Forest Master. Do either of you remember the details we learned from them? From our pointy-headed friend?
We learned the name Draconians.
We did, yes.
Which is a fantastic name for dragon people.
It's really good.
I'm so... Like, I remember just the absolute incredulity when the name Dragonborn started catching on in D&D. And I was like, why not Draconians? It was perfect.
It was already there, yeah.
It's such a good name. It's like, it's descriptive too. Draconian is an adjective as well. It's got like...
Right, yeah.
It's
even
like
before
loaded.
This, yeah. It's kind of perfect because it's an adjective that sounds, and then when you turn it into a noun, it sounds like the name of a race of something, right? Like a species of something. Like, yeah, these are Draconians. It's so
Austin,
good.
How are we feeling about Draconians?
I love it as a name. Because I didn't read the books until, well, now. In 3.5 is when I was introduced to the Dragonborns from an old buddy of mine being obsessed with dragons. And, you know, back in 3.5, which was my edition, you had to do a weird ceremony and make a papier-mâché egg, and that was always a good time.
Oh, yeah, their lore changes all the time, right?
Yes, I'm kind of glad that they're nowadays just a race that is born.
Because it's in the name.
Yeah, well, just fucking making a paper mache.
The dragon mage, didn't you hear?
Is just the concept was always dumb back in 3.5, but I liked it because they were real good.
It's true, but speaking of being born versus being hatched from papier-mâché eggs, we do get some hints that in conversation between the heroes that the Draconians are not of their world, right? That they are somehow unnatural, which seems
goddamn Planescape.
Yeah,
right. Seems to be pointing towards something, right? And then also finally, what we also learned from the Forest Master, of course, is their direction, right? They have, like we said earlier, they have to go to Xak Tsaroth. And that is the canonical pronunciation, by the way. None of this Xak Tsaroth or anything like it. It's Xak Tsaroth.
And thank you
It was
for
like
that,
I was close my entire life. I always went to Xak Tsaroth.
Yeah, it's very close. It's a hard S. It's not quite it's not like a Tsar, you know. It's like, actually, it is like this, the TS in Tsar, right? It's just a hard S.
Yeah.
Not
even German. All the heroes, they go to Xak Tsaroth.
Yeah, I'm just naturally terrible at pronouncing things.
Yeah, I kind of wish we could all I kind of wish that everyone knew how to read IPA, because that would be just an IPA guide for words at the back of every fantasy book, please. Something that I can plug into a reader.
A few comments on the last one about Austin's pronunciation of Sturm.
Yes, it was the one time I read comments, and then I stopped doing that because I was feeling bad.
Don't feel bad. They just thought it was funny that you changed him to a bard named Strum.
I mean, I know what one of my future characters are going to be, so that
Strum is a fantastic bard name.
Hey, if you're listening to this on YouTube and you're on Team Austin, leave a comment that says "Strum for Austin," please.
Indeed.
As
one
we move
like
on to
equal
chapter 12.
one Strum.
Yes. Let's move on to chapter 12 with the Pegasai.
Wow.
Only one of whom seemed particularly judgmental, right? Like, all of the Pegasai flew down, and one of them was like, "We gotta carry these guys," and a dwarf. Like, I'm like, wow, even this. I forgot that this is old school, like D&D, and so even the horse is racist. Like,
it's funny because,
guys,
like, in real life, horses just are racist against camels specifically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it used to be a big thing in the Crusades where the Crusaders had to work really hard and retrain and, like, rebreed their horses to not just fucking panic and run away when camels showed up.
Oh my god.
Well,
okay.
This is just, again, proving the superiority of camels.
Yeah.
How many humps horses got? None?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I'm still saying it was a shame that the U.S. Camel Corps did not succeed in introducing camels in the United States.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
Like,
but
granted, I know ecological damage, well, whatever, camels.
But these horses, of course, they do not have humps. They have wings, for they are the flying Pegasai, and they seem to actually be very well taken with Gold Moon. And I believe that there is a picture of that sort of very famous image. I think it's actually, is it the picture? I wonder if...
Yeah, I think if you just Google Gold Moon, her on the Pegasus is like one of the first pictures you see.
Yes, and I think it has the distinction of being the first one where she actually got her pants.
The poor woman went all this time
with no pants, and this is the one where she finally got her pants. Yeah,
yeah. On the Wikipedia page, that is the image.
Yes, Clyde Caldwell was kind enough to give her the pants because Margaret Weiss was so distraught. The story goes over the original art, the very first, the debut art for Gold Moon. Despite the description including the pants and Margaret Weiss being very firm on the pants, the artist drew her without pants. She just had her buckskin top that then ended like a bathing suit. And
we would eventually learn that Clyde Caldwell, when he made his exit, did it, he said, because he was tired of drawing with political correctness, which I assume means that they made him give people pants and he didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could even see with these pants that Goldmoon's wearing, right? Like they're really not there.
They're a bare leg with a seam. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I stand by my comments in the Snarf Quest video. I did a big coverage of like early D&D art, and you know what? If Clyde Caldwell can draw legs and thighs and pelvises like that, he has the right.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you can draw those legs, I think you may even have a moral obligation to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the way he puts red gems on everything that he can, because he draws that one red gem like so evocatively, and I want to put it in my mouth. But anyway, like, it looks delicious. It's like
friendly
lava.
Reminder: don't put random red gems into your mouth.
Why not?
You would not have survived the Tide Pod generation if you were that age.
Oh my God, no! I said it out loud. I'm like, is anyone surprised? They look like candy. Like, I
see. Being of that generation, as a millennial, being told, "Oh, these millennials eating Tide Pods," and I'm like, "Bro, millennials were like in our late 20s.
Yes,
Nobody's
the
eating
Zoomers
Tide
who ate
Pods."
Tide Pods.
Yeah, I won't even get into on this podcast the things I used to eat in my 20s because they also came from under the sink. And anyway, so with the Pegasai encounter, we also, of course, get it much like a bunch of other sort of group encounters. We get some insights into the various characters, right? And I think it was neat that Goldmoon, of course, she's so stately, but also Tasslehoff, because they put all of them under this like magical sleep spell, and Tasslehoff actually beats out the half-elf for one thing, which is kind of crazy. But he's real bummed out about it. He's sad. He wanted to fly.
I think this is the scene where Tass really starts to like hit and make sense as a character. He's just got this like earnest desire to experience everything around him. And in this case, he's like magically enchanted so that he can't. And you can just like see the sorrow as he's falling asleep for not getting the chance to experience this thing. And it's a big character moment, despite being such a small little detail.
Yeah. I am really liking Tasslehoff.
Really?
Oh,
hooray.
Yeah, like so much.
That makes me happy because a lot of people, I mean, anyone listening who's in the D&D community probably knows about the hate that gets thrown in the direction of the Kender, and especially in the direction of Tasslehoff. I think because people remember him as just, they only remember his like really big moments in the books, right? Where he's just like, oh, hey, I stole the thing, but I didn't really steal it. Ooh, it was just in my pocket. Like, that's all they remember about the character. But like, and that's, to be honest, that's all I remembered about the character for a long time. But like, the more we read through these books again, I'm like, oh shoot, there's actually a lot of depth to this character.
Oh, not much depth to him.
Just because he's not afraid of things doesn't mean he doesn't have like a depth of emotion and a lot of the same motivations either. And he's a very unique character, and I'm enjoying him a lot.
Absolutely, and I think people got so annoyed with that kind of archetype of character that they usually kind of they either avoid that archetype or they like flatten them somewhat. Like what's his name in Arcane, the little inventor dude? I don't know if either of you have watched Arcane.
I did, yes.
Yeah, he's
only the first season though.
He's kind of this archetype of character as well. He's a small folk-ish person. He's got a heart of gold, and he's very curious. But that's just kind of like it for him. He's kind, but he's kind of two-dimensional. And I think Tass is the only character in this archetype that I've seen very often at all that, like, he's a full character.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's more is I did not remember about him at all. Is he's kind of, I mean, I knew he was like Flint's friend, but he's actually kind of like a bro. And not like in the way that we like say bro now. Like he's like a dude bro almost, right? Like a bro dude. Because like at one point, you know, before actually this brings us back into the chapter as they're wandering through the swamp and Flint is grumbling and complaining so much, right? Flint or Tanis goes to Tasslehoff and asks him to distract Flint from his grumbling and stress and pain. And he mentions like, hey, he's like, I know you got some booze on you. And Tasslehoff's like, yeah, I do. and I brought some from the tavern in Solus. And he's immediately like runs off and he's like, Flint, you want a drink? And like, that's it. Like, and I'm just like, oh, he's not like a child in the sense of like, I'm an adult, but I'm just a small, he's a dude.
He's a guy's guy. Absolutely,
Yeah.
he is. I'd love to have a friend
which is
like Tass.
what I've been enjoying.
Yeah. And so then they go and they get drunk. They start drinking, and they actually end up, despite being the two short races. I find this quite funny. Despite both of them being the two short races and thus having a lower movement speed than the rest of their party, once you add alcohol to the equation, in a swamp, somehow they actually get quite a few paces ahead of the rest of the party, and that's when they discover, of course, the river that they have to cross, and the logs that they have to use as a bridge, and the Draconian who would ambush them at that river. Do you all remember the ambush?
I do.
Yes, well, there was a scene before there that we should discuss first, though.
There
a very
was.
important
You're right.
one.
Oh my God, we may need to. I was just talking about chapter 13. Jesus, chapter 12. Back to chapter 12. Yes, the Pegasai. They drop them off in. We are going on such wonderful tangents. They get dropped off and they come to just outside of the swamp, and that's when they see the smoke from Quishu. Right, the village that Gold Moon and Riverwind used to call home, and will probably never call home again. They see some smoke in the distant horizon, and they go to find it. Does anyone want to talk about what they found there? Austin?
Oh boy, howdy! It wasn't a pleasant scene. The entire it was burnt.
Yep.
It was rendered like they burnt it so well that it melted the stone, and oh my God!
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was.
Yep.
It was gone pretty much.
Yeah. It was the stone walls that they made, little walls that they made, and everything were melted. Right. Tanis noticed. He's like, "What fire could melt rock?" And probably contributing. But I think maybe the charred bodies are also contributing to, like, how does the book describe them? I have it right here. Yeah, there it is. There's a quote that says, the ravaged town of Quishu would always stand out in his mind as a symbol of the horrors of war, which kind of drives home that, one, it was an awful situation, but also I think is the first moment where the Dragonlance Chronicles are framed specifically as a war story. We kind of heard this a few times, actually, when Wizards of the Coast was releasing their 5th edition Dragonlance supplement. They're like, Dragonlance is a war story, was part of what they were saying. And I have always agreed with them, but I never really heard it explicitly called that. So it was kind of cool because the horrors of war, of course, is generally speaking the theme of all great war stories in fiction. And so that was cool to see.
And definitely, Dragonlance is at its best when it's a war story.
I think so. It's such a small world, right? Like, if you look at the map of Ansalon, it's quite tiny. It's very dense. Like, everything, you're never very far from something legendary, but it's small. It's a very tiny continent. It's probably not even really a continent. It's probably smaller than most U.S. states. So you kind of need it to be a war story, right? Because, like, what other epic moments are going to happen other than, like, a battle between the very, very tiny nations who call it home?
I mean, we went from they were almost at Haven, which was a whole journey to get there. They went from Solus to the plains, and then they're headed to Xak Tsaroth, and they were told that, it's like a 2-day walk. Which really, no horses, that's pretty close.
That's super close. It's like we walk as a species a 15-minute mile, right? Like, so a 2-day, it's very, very, very close.
But yeah, this scene, this scene really stuck with me. This is one of those scenes that, like, I've always remembered about Dragonlance. And it was surprising rereading it and seeing it was only like a page and a half. They got such a big, hard-hitting scene in that short little span.
Yep. It's right on par with the the burning of like I think like the burning of like Aunt Beru and Luke Skywalker's uncle, right, in Star Wars. You don't care much about these characters, even though we're introducing them when they're alive. But then you see their burnt skeletons, and you're kind of like, oh man, this is going to completely alter the direction of this boy's life. Like, it's the same thing here. And one of the elements of the scene, something that I remembered very well, an image, was the guys who had been nailed up to some posts or impaled or something with their shields. And I had remembered it as like the warriors from the village. But like rereading it, I was like, learned that I realized that they were actually people who were part of the invading army, and that they had been executed for taking prisoners, right? A kind of mercy. And Verminard, the named apparent leader of this force, had ordered them executed in a very terrible way as punishment for taking prisoners when he didn't allow prisoners to be taken. Which I think just adds, I think that's kind of the capstone for the whole moment. Like, we see the torched bodies, the burnt buildings. Of course, this is war, and war is horrible, but like, this could be any side of a war, right? This could happen to the good side or the evil side in any fantasy war. But when we see this message, that kind of drives home like, oh, we're dealing with someone who is heinous.
Yeah.
He's even got vermin in his name.
Yeah. So you and I have the full weight of nostalgia from reading this in childhood. Yes. Austin, how'd this scene hit for you?
It hit pretty hard because, again, I didn't know any of the actual villagers, and all I heard was the secondhand stories. But any time that a village is, as far as I know, wiped out to a man, like, very well could be no one left alive, because I do remember them not being able to find any tracks leading away from the scene.
Mm-hmm.
That always just... that hurts.
And then with the dog trying to wake up a dead.
Yeah.
That's the one that always stuck with me. That
man,
it's crazy how just that little moment it was so much more devastating and illustrative of the horror of the situation than so many books and stories that try and like be so much more graphic to explain how bad something was. All we needed was just a sad dog, and that showed it.
Yep. Well, I had blocked it out of my memory immediately after reading it, and you just brought it back again.
Yeah. well, to add to that, I think the sad dog scene is a much more humanizing moment, because I can more easily picture that in my head than the brutal descriptions of like discarded and destroyed bodies, etc., that you get in a lot of other books.
Yeah. Well, and
it go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and also it humanizes Sturm a little bit. It's Sturm who goes over and comforts the dog, right? If I'm remembering correctly. And that is a pretty good moment, I think, because for a lot of the chapters so far, Sturm's been kind of like a stick in the mud, right? In a lot of ways, like he's kind of a holier than thou, better than you, but like we also are given the impression through narration that maybe he's not as great as he says he is, and so you're kind of not liking him. But then this moment with the dog, it's like, oh wait, no, actually, he's the one who goes over to comfort the sad dog. Like, he's got a real big heart. Okay,
yeah,
it's a very important moment for the character, I think, for our understanding of the character, rather.
Yeah. I also think it was actually really artfully done that. We didn't get this scene from either Goldmoon or Riverwoods, or Riverwind's fuck. I'm gonna do that a million times, by the way. Dragonlance.
Right.
I always get mixed up between Riverwood and Riverwind. It's just my entire my
Look,
entire history with both. I just get them mixed up.
I'm telling you, I think it's a callback. I think it's a callback from Skyrim because in Riverwood you hear about death on black wings and
right. Oh my god.
There's so many references.
Fucking mind blown. Gosh, damn it.
But what I was trying to say was, I think it's good that we didn't get this scene from either Now I can't even say her name, Gold Moon, or Riverwind's perspective, because I feel like it hit better to see it from other characters who were able to see their reactions and also see the things that they were looking at, rather than kind of hear the story of how sad they were in their heads. I think it was more powerful to watch Gold Moon be devastated than to like live it through her eyes. I think it just a lot better.
I think so too, and I think it also adds to the impact because obviously Riverwind and Gold Moon are going to be devastated. These are people that they knew, right? And a people that Gold Moon was responsible for leading. But they were strangers to the rest of the party. And so like they could have been kind of like nonchalant about it, but like by them being so affected, by these strangers being so affected by what they saw, it kind of tells the reader like, this is horrible. Anyone who saw this would be crushed.
Because the audience doesn't know these characters either, so it's better for us to be in sort of the audience surrogate's eyes in this case, which in this case the surrogate is everyone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's real good. Plus, in an esoteric way, it allows Riverwind and Gold Moon the privacy of their grief. But that is true. Moving on to chapter 13, though, now that we have discussed the sorrowfulness. Now there's the getting drunk in the treacherous swamps and so on. And okay. So Tasslehoff's a bro.
If we missed that scene.
Yes.
Yeah, so Tasslehoff, pretty rad.
Pretty rad bro. But before they got drunk and wandered off, a few things happen in chapter 13 other than them trekking into the swamp. We actually have an argument between Gold Moon and Riverwind, right? Where I think we get a bit more insight into not just their relationship, but like the forces affecting their relationship. And the tribal politics where Riverwind seems pretty stressed out and Gold Moon takes it, I think, in the wrong way. I think she kind of takes it a bit more personally than he intended it to be, but she gets into the fact that she was expected to lead the village for such a long time while he was away, and that she had become chieftain's daughter, which I'm guessing from context is actually like a name change for her while she was in a particular role or something, or maybe calling someone Mr. Vice President or something like that. She talks about how even having to like risk the possibility of assassination and name dropping NPCs we may never hear about. It was very interesting to me to sort of see that like this village actually has, it sounds like, a very complicated system of authority, actually, with a lot of intrigues and things.
Yeah, and one thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about Chapter 11 is that even though these are discussed as like a tribal people, they're never like treated as though their societies are like simpler in any way.
Right. Yep.
And on top of it, Gold Moon's nobility carries through anywhere she goes. Like even Caramon from a supposedly civilized place, he looks like the barbarian next to Gold Moon.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think that that's something that I think I mean, obviously the barbarian people of Dragonlance are coded very strongly Native American, right? like real, which makes sense too for the 1970s and the 1980s. And I think that this is probably a good example of like, although there are definitely like criticisms that could be levied, I'm sure. I think this is a real strong example of like the authors consistently trying to be like, we're taking the aesthetics, we're casting aside the oversimplifications and the sort of like fetishizations that were commonplace at the time. And which was that, like, you know, of course, in the 70s and 80s, everyone was like, oh, the natives were a peaceful, you know, simple people who were very spiritual, and they used every part of the, right, you know. And it's good that they're like, no, this is actually very complex. And like, she's a noblewoman and she has the same like concerns, like talking about like, I have to be careful because I might be poisoned by my political rival lore man. Like, this is a very standard. That could be a court, right? A court in the fantasy kingdom, a court in Elizabethan England, a court anywhere. But here it is in their little kind of village.
A real society where she's the regent for her inept father, and there's political machinations all around her, and it's all off screen, which is fascinating.
Yep. And it's an argument, though, especially like, I feel like a lover's argument is such a good way to deliver that kind of exposition, because sometimes it can be really heavy, you know, show don't tell, all of that. But like that kind of like detail dropping, that happens when people who are romantically involved argue. They're constantly giving context to their position in an argument, and so it's a really great tool.
I thought it was a well done. I thought it was a well done argument overall, because you definitely felt like the two, although they really love each other, they were both like poisoned against each other by the circumstances they had just witnessed. It felt quite real.
Yeah, it drew up all of their memories all at once, right? And then Tasslehoff and Flint get drunk and they get ambushed by a draconian.
Dude,
we're back to where we were.
Yes. They get drunk, and we learned that the draconians can do some wizard stuff.
Yes.
And they can do it in a real unfair way, because they're magic resistant at the same time.
Yeah.
Really puts Flint in a tough spot.
And that magic actually kind of turns the tide, because it allows the draconians to win in the fight through the use of many web spells.
Darkness.
And darkness as well, yes.
Yes.
Leading to the heroes being captured by the draconians, all except for apparently Tasslehoff and Flint, who fell off their log bridge into the water. I admit that when I was like reading that section, I was half hoping that it was going to turn into like a log rolling situation where like the draconian and Flint are on the log together. And so Flint starts trying to roll the log with his feet to get the draconian off, but that was not the direction it went in.
They're not nearly Canadian enough for that to happen.
Yeah, I know. Very sad. And with their capture, so fortunately, I mean, that was pretty much all there was to chapter 13, other than some lore dropping about like there's some kind of weird muck in the swamp and they have a special name for like quicksand or bog or whatever.
Sounded like I was strongly sympathizing with the characters treading through this swamp, because just like the idea of all this mud all over your clothes and inside your boots, and you're walking for hours in this,
and you're carrying armor and adventuring gear. Yeah. Especially because it sounds like other critters in the swamp are far better at moving through it. Like they talk about like a giant snake going into the bog swamp, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah. You don't know what's in there.
I had this moment where they were like, it started to get better by noon. And I just had this like breath of relief, like, thank God you guys didn't have to do that for longer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty real.
Yeah, it's why I'm an urban adventurer, I'm not gonna lie.
You're not spending any time in the Everglades, just walking around.
No, I hang out in prairies and in cities. It's pretty rad up here.
Nice. So chapters, all the chapters leading up to chapter 13.
Yeah. Once we get up to chapter 13, I was like a little. Never lived in a swamp. Lived in forests. Lived in plains.
Okay.
We can get you a job in Solus. That seems like a pretty good town to get yourself set up in. Good fantasy.
Yeah.
Town.
Everyone's real nice, as far as we know.
Or I could not. Like, I don't know. Actually, I think living there wouldn't be bad.
They're pretty sick. You get to live in tree houses. You could work in Odic's tavern.
Eat French fries all day.
Oh man, I could go for some French fries.
Right? I mean, I know the official cookbook of Dragonlance, it's more like, is it home fries? Is that what people call it when the potato is diced into cubes? That's home fries, right?
Oh, it depends on the size.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, it's basically that, but it's still French fries. The whole process is the same, which I've always loved. That actually, jumping all the way back to Odic's spiced potatoes. That's the reason I still put pizza in all of my D&D worlds that I make, because I feel like if you're going to world build, you've always got to do it from the assumption that you might get sucked into that world through a vortex. And just in case that happens, you should put in your favorite foods so you can still have your comfort food when you get there.
It's important to just describe what it is, never say it's pizza, and have the players after they hear about this flatbread covered in sauce and cheese, they're like, wait a second.
That's pizza.
Yeah, see, that's why in all of my homebrewed settings, I just throw down a rule. Anyone named Austin is immediately immortal and the richest person in the plains. There you go. I don't make the rules, but, on the off chance it happens, I'm set.
Noted. So in chapter 14, we actually see now the outcome of the companions being captured by the Draconians. Because they are taken to a camp and sort of held in these not steel cages or iron cages or those cages on carts that we often see in a lot of fantasy things, but just wicker cages, right? Essentially great big wicker nets, similar to a hut.
Which would certainly work the Draconians on your average human.
This always is curious to me that they take them captive at all, right? Because we had just previously seen in Quishu these two hobgoblins executed for taking prisoners. And now these Draconians who seem to be very evil and unnatural are we're going to take some prisoners. And I'm not quite sure why they did that. It's the same thing.
I think I get it, but it also feels a little inconsistent. Spoiler alert, they need a lot of people to do some indentured servitude for them, of course. But
of course, yeah.
They might have not wanted to take the villagers of Quishu because they're of a little bit hardier stuff than most people. They get described a few times as a warrior people. So maybe they're not going to make good slaves. Maybe they're too tough. But then they also capture the party, and they're all clearly warriors too.
Yeah.
I think what might be happening, and again, I haven't read further along. It might be an Orokai versus Orc situation of working under the grimdark evil lord, whose name is escaping me right now.
Verminard.
They follow his orders, but when Verminard's not there, they're going to do their own thing, including taking prisoners to use as, again, slaves for sacrifices. Maybe they just
sacrifices
people.
Is possible. True.
People could taste nice. I don't know their preferred diet.
That's true. That's fair. I guess, it's maybe they're also just lazy because they one of the members of the party is poisoned, right? Raistlin is suffering from a horrible poison that will almost certainly kill him.
Raistlin just cannot stop suffering the entire book.
I know. And the Draconians seem fine to let that happen slowly, even though they specifically say, like, oh no, we can't let a magic user live. But letting one die very slowly is totally fine. They would rather take the chance that the mage might recover just for a bit of extra suffering.
It might also just be a perverse sense of pleasure.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
They're evil.
Yeah, they're evil. And like ending him is a mercy, and we can't do that.
Yeah, we want to see him cry. And hold on, sorry.
While coughing, they pick up the blue staff by wrapping it in a blanket.
Yes, blanket. Yeah, that moment, the Draconians were trying to figure out the crystal staff, and kept getting zapped by it, which it's funny to me. Seems a little comedic, but then they wrap it in a blanket, and I get it. But also, that feels to me like a loophole because, like, I don't know. I feel like magic shouldn't be, especially like divine magic, shouldn't be like undone that easily.
By a blanket, or I mean, if you get a thick set of gloves, I think anyone can kind of just wield it because they're wearing the appropriate gloves. Yeah,
like if I'm a dude, can I just put on some leather gloves and just is that okay? At that point, like, I don't know. I don't quite understand that, but
I guess it comes down to
a little bit. Yeah.
Are you evil at heart?
Me? No.
Then,
no.
Well, then you should be fine with touching the blue staff.
Well, no, even neutral people can't touch it.
Oh, well, are you a neutral person?
Probably.
Can't trust them neutrals.
No, I know. I'm neutral on one of the axes. Remains to be seen which one. But they do manage to pick it up by wrapping it in a blanket, which they take to a silhouette. It seems as though there is a great and terrible monster looming over the camp, but perfectly still. Something which I believe the characters, probably Tanis, because most of I think we get his perspective more than anyone else's, kind of identifies as a dragon. And they talk a bit about this dragon. What do we think about the dragon?
I like dragons.
Well, kind of embarrassing that Raistlin uses this exact dragon to be like, see, the supernatural is real.
Yeah.
This particular dragon is the one that he says that over.
Well, to be fair, he was like real messed up on whatever poison he got hit with.
And he thinks he's a wizard, but actually he's just delirious all the time.
Yeah, he was going places in his mind.
They weren't good places.
They were not good places.
To see, they were also very skeptical. I don't remember if it was this chapter or the next one, but it's a minor detail, so we can discuss it here. That they're also skeptical of dragon or of griffins being real. So, like, even in this fantasy world, there's a lot of like, that's just fantasy.
Yeah. I believe the Griffins is chapter 16.
Because they find a helmet and then they're like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, in chapter 16.
Yeah, because it had griffin feathers, and people are like, griffins aren't real. So are dragons.
Did it though? But one thing we notice, though, as they're sort of, I guess, chanting, is that the Draconians seem to worship this dragon, and they themselves, the way they're talking about it, this still confuses me. A lot of the Draconians seem to think that this dragon is actually a dragon, which is weird because it's not, right? It's revealed by Tasslehoff and Flint, who, while the companions are trying to figure out what they can do about Raistlin, Tasslehoff and Flint have been sort of creeping around the perimeter looking for a way in to save their friends. And what do they discover when they get up close to the dragon?
Yes, made of wicker and it's hollow.
Yeah, it's a hollow dragon.
It's a hollow dragon, but it has like controls and stuff in it too. Like a really elaborate like Wizard of Oz machine, right? Like I am the great and all-powerful dragon looming over your camp and not at all made of obvious wicker. Like that really... I don't know how much production value went into this dragon, basically, is what I'm saying. It seems like to justify...
The incentive structure of making this thing is crazy, where it's like, we're going to put in all this effort into creating a convincing dragon that can be puppeteered from the inside so that people will think dragons are real. Meanwhile, spoiler alert, dragons are real and they have them. They didn't need to do this.
Yeah, the dragon...
Yeah.
If I recall, it was mostly to kowtow some of the not as intelligent Draconians.
Yes.
From the high priests.
It is mentioned at some point after Caramon freaking out about his brother dying. He sort of flips out into a berserker rage and manages to rip the wicker cage apart with his bare hands. He rips it open, which is actually quite an impressive physical feat. Wicker is not easy to destroy like that. And then he gets stopped by the Draconians and his companions, and he's to be brought to the dragon because the dragon suddenly says, it's like, bring him to me. And they're all like, oh shit, yeah, boss. Like, wait, what? Like, but I guess it's mentioned in the narration that it normally, or through Draconian dialogue or something, that it only normally speaks when this one spellcasting Draconian is like doing stuff. So presumably, I guess the smarter spellcasting Draconian is just using it for their own like laughs. I don't know. I don't understand this dragon still.
I mean, when you are outnumbered by a lot to one, having the ability to kowtow them to some kind of higher power uber being might play in your favors. As soon as you displease the magic casting elite, the dragon will smite you.
Yeah.
I still feel like this was unnecessary versus just like, because they've all seen real dragons. You could just be like, Dragon priest, I speak with their authority. You're going to be in real trouble if you disregard me. I don't think we need to like, we need to make this giant industrial dragon to do this.
Yeah.
I agree.
And on top of that, like, I mean, without getting into spoiler territory, like, presumably in a story about these gods being sought and so on, like these people would be, if they were going to build because I've sometimes thought, I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be like a weird machine to like, just, I don't know, trick your allies for funsies. But maybe it could be, it's like a shrine, right? Like a shrine to this authority figure that they worship, and they bring it with them for luck. Totally fine. But like, they do probably worship someone higher than that. And wouldn't that be the person who... I'm just saying the shrine should probably have more heads.
Yeah, I concur.
You know?
I mean, maybe it's just to impress guests when they come over to check out the Draconian's pad. Is like, hey, check out our dragon. It's pretty cool.
That's fair. It's possible. Yeah.
Because, I mean, as we all know, the Draconians seem hell-bent on friendship and camaraderie.
It's true. So much so that they've noticed who is gone when the dragon is talking, because it confuses them that it's suddenly talking now. And why is that, Will?
Can you repeat the question?
Why is the dragon talking to them in the absence of their dragon priest? And why is it demanding that Caramon be brought to it?
Oh, it's got a little guy in it.
He's got a little guy?
Just got
a little guy in it.
Oh
and
my god.
Nobody questions that the dragon is now speaking in common.
Feed
they all
me,
speak in
big
common.
fighter man.
Yes. All the Draconians speak in common. Why wouldn't they question that?
Oh no, that's
They
fair.
make a joke about it where like like Tanis basically asks like the equivalent of like, do English you speak? And they're like, yeah, obviously better than you, dummy.
Yeah, you jerk. God, of all the good guys we could pick up today, we had to pick up the fucking racist good guys. Jeez. But yeah, no, they do, however, speak their own languages. We do get that established, but only when they're talking to Draconians of the same type, right? So when it's the sort of the dummy Draconians, the ones who turn to stone, are talking to each other, they are using one language, and the spellcasting Draconians are using another language. But when they're talking together, that's when they go to common, which is very interesting. It didn't strike me as interesting when I was younger, I think, because that's how everything was in D&D, like second edition. Everything has its own niche language, like every subrace. Yeah, I mean, there's even like, they talk about like gnomes being able to speak the language of like voles and mice and rat. Like every animal has its own language. Like,
well, it's very EU-like, which is very funny because the EU no longer has England in it, and yet English is still the language they all use.
Yes,
at least for now.
Technically, they only
switch
have
over to
one
France.
primarily English-speaking country left, and that's Ireland, which is bilingual.
Yes. And of course, Dragonlance has a lot of languages. I think it actually had more languages in the second edition D&D days than most of the other settings, because like even for humans, every individual kingdom, because in most D&D worlds, common is assumed to be the default human language. But like every nation in Dragonlance has its own language. So there's the Solamnia. There's like, presumably they speak Solamnic, and which we see several times in the series. And then all of these different like nations, the barbarians, they speak their own language. All of these different people speak their own language. Hill dwarves speak a language. Mountain dwarves speak a language. Gully dwarves speak a language. Everybody speaks a language, and there's a lot going on there. So, but now
it's also interesting that they don't. Maybe they do in later books, but Margaret Weiss doesn't do the like this language sounds like this kind of thing. Like she doesn't like phonetically write out what this other language is. She just says like they mutter something in Draconian.
Yeah. Unless they specifically want it to be, usually unless it's a specific quote from the heroes, right? Like sometimes Sturm will say something in Solamnic. He'll say it's like Estularis with Methus, or Raceland will say some magic words. But yeah, in the case of the Draconians,
Shirak.
Ah, yes, and a Dulak when it's done. So the dragon, of course, Caramon is being dragged to this dragon, which is actually Tasslehoff on the inside piloting it. And they have a whole situation. It almost turns into a fight. And then it does sort of turn into a fight when the other companions grab all their stuff. They realize where their weapons are, and they run, and they join the fray. And the dragon starts to fly because apparently it has wings that are capable of generating lift. Which is crazy. And there's a fire set, and everything starts to catch on fire. And and Raceland is healed, of course, by Goldman once she gets the staff back, yada yada.
Can still heal him even if he can't touch it.
Yeah, he was healed, but only after she prayed real hard, right? Because the staff was like, the staff was either out of charges or the divinity didn't want to heal him. It's old school D&D, so it could have been either. But Goldmoon prayed real hard, which makes me, someone who was game mastering back then, wonder if maybe the gods didn't want Raceland healed in that moment. Maybe they were kind of like, he could die. But it was like Goldmoon
they are
being
chosen
like, please.
by the gods, but that one.
Yeah, fuck that guy in particular.
But Goldman's just like, come on, and then they're like, okay, fine. That is sort of my impression of that moment.
Yeah.
But But after the fire and everything, they managed to use the fires that spread to the huts. I think because of the dragon's big wings, they escaped.
Yes.
Yes, except for poor Tasslehoff, who is trapped inside of the giant wicker dragon. He's about to be wicker manned, without the bees, and but then they rescue him, and it's probably it's a really good moment for deflating the tension, I guess, like the sort of the drama of the moment.
Very effective. I like properly chuckled reading this scene.
Yeah.
Where, like,
Oh, same here.
he's stuck in the dragon head. They can't get him out, so they just cut off
His
the
little
dragon's
legs are-
head. And they
Yeah,
just
his little
like
legs are kicking out.
yeah, they just like tuck him under. I think it was Caramon's arm, and they just like carry him like a football stuck in a dragon's head out of the fight. Fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. And you may have chuckled, but Raceland laughed. Like, which is, I think, the first time we see Raceland experience any kind of joy, where he's just laughing hysterically at the sight
And
of
nobody wants
Tasslehoff's
to hear
legs.
that sound again.
Yep. But
Because
It's kinda
again,
just
It's also
everybody's
another
harshing on my
humanizing
boy.
moment. Dragonlance
Yes, it is.
is really good with the humanizing these characters. None of them like feel stock. They all have these little moments where you're like, wait, that's a person though.
yeah. And I think it says a bit about what Raceland finds funny too, because like he's not, I feel it kind of goes back to what you said about the start of the chapter, where like Raceland is he's like, this is the supernatural, right? And it's the embarrassing wicker dragon and not a real one, because he's messed up on the poisons. I
Yep.
think he's laughing at both the image, right, of just Tasslehoff being stuck in the wicker dragon head, because that's funny as fuck. But also, I think, can we say that word on the podcast? He's it's super funny image, and but I think he's also laughing at his own like the feeling he had, right? He's laughing at himself a little bit too. About like his own like willingness to sort of assume automatically that this silhouette was a real dragon.
He's also
And-
probably got that like what would you call the feeling, like that post sickness high where you're like,
Oh yeah,
like you've just
a
started
little
to feel better.
delirious.
Yeah, you're a little delirious, but you feel so good.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like I I try to limit my comparisons between Raceland and like black-pilled internet people, but like there is a sort of a self-judgy sense of humor among people who like have the kind of self-esteem issues that Raceland has, where they externalize it constantly on other people because that's the only way they can cope with the loathing. And yet when they're confronted, when they're kind of confronted with it through their own efforts, right, they kind of mock it. It's funny to them. They're like, oh yeah, of course this would be me. Like it rang very true for me, that moment of laughter. Like it didn't feel like we're gonna make a funny moment and make Raceland laugh at it. It felt like a very like organic moment for him to actually finally find something funny.
Absolutely. Austin, Raceland Stan. How has your
Yeah.
how has he been developing as a character in your eyes through all this?
Again, I really like him. It's I went in figuring I wasn't going to like him because I grew up on the internet and
Right.
he was the edgy one.
Yes.
But he's just like him because he's the smart one. He's like, well, we should stay on the road, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, he's not yet been wrong, right, about most things other than the Wicker Dragon.
Yeah, but I mean, when I've done drugs and been on drugs, I have said some really out there stuff, such as, that dragon there.
Mm-hmm. That cloud
Make it
looks
known
like
to the
a
audience
dragon.
that no one on this podcast has ever been in the same room as a drug. None of us even know what they are.
Yeah.
That's an
Yes,
expression.
I've never done a drug before.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Nor have I
Yep.
ever smoked with cigarettes.
Definitely not done that.
Yeah, don't smoke, kids. We're good role models.
Chapter 15. Chapter
Yes, meanwhile,
15.
in chapter 15.
15. They've made their escape. They're almost there. And Raceland comments that there's a storm a brewing and that they have to hurry. He seems real concerned about the storm. I guess because they're in a swamp and you don't want it to get any more wet. But as he pushes people, they find a map marker in the swamp, an old obelisk, right? That he kind of insists on reading, and Sturm doesn't want him to. And because Sturm has been getting his Raceland hate on since right around chapter 13, I think. He really likes to dig into Raceland. But Raceland insists on translating it, and it turns out that it's a marker telling them exactly where they are. It's a "you are here" moment, telling them that they have reached Xak Tsaroth. What else?
Only good things ahead from here.
Yeah, only good things ahead.
Yes. Well, there are some good things, like Riverwind confesses to Tanis that they are now friends, which is apparently a very significant bond in among his people, and Tanis is honored by it. Mm-hmm.
It felt earned. It is like
it did.
Theoretically pretty fast because it's been like 2 days, but like you see what these two have been through together already in this.
Yeah.
Yep. And it seems to be very important to Tanis that Riverwind said it, because he understands the context. He knows this about Riverwind's people and culture, but he then sort of returns it like twice, right? Because he doesn't just say to, he knows that for Riverwind, it means like, I would lay down my life for you. And Tanis tells him the same thing, like, I would lay down my life for you, and I would also lay it down for Goldmoon. Like, he gives back more than he gets.
There's going to be no like, well, it's also like for Riverwind as well, because Riverwind's like number one priority is protecting Goldmoon, and Tanis is like, yeah, you're a friend to me. I would lay down my life for you, and I will also work with you as one of my top priorities to help keep Goldmoon alive as well. We are one in this.
Yep. And for me, this is a moment where I'm really beginning to realize something about Tanis, because doesn't change the fact that Tanis is just kind of a boy toy. But he also, like, I'm beginning to realize in this moment now that the reason we kind of jump back into his narrative perspective whenever we need like insight into the inner workings of another member of the party, right? Because Tanis does a lot of thinking about everybody else. He's almost always the one who's like, when you need just the narrator to say, Caramon is this kind of person, or Raceland is this kind of person, or this Sturm has these kinds of feelings. But these aren't things that the characters would reveal through their own actions. It's almost always Tanis thinking about them. And I'm realizing now that Tanis cares probably more deeply for everyone in the party than anybody else does. Right? Yeah. Like, that's why.
Well, I mean, we'll discuss more of this later on when it becomes a thing, but
right.
Like you can see a lot with like his upbringing, why he's that way. And it feels very well considered.
Yeah. Yeah. He cares a lot about the people around him. And I think that kind of sort of affirms his place as seemingly the de facto leader of the party.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people who have had, again, not to spoil it, but like people who've had upbringing similar to Tanis, whatever that may be.
Right.
They also describe that like they have this like hyper intense like focus on trying to like understand the people around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a very nice use of like a character trait to sort of guide the flow between narrative perspectives, because of course, as we discussed in the last episode, that flowing between narratives is very, very important to this book. The ability to make you feel like you had said, Will, in that last episode, the ability to feel like every character is sort of they're all co-equal, right? They're all the same importance to the story.
Yeah.
and it does it so well.
I remember Tanis being so much more of the main character, but like, I mean, if there is a main character, it's Tanis, but like when you're reading it, it doesn't necessarily feel all that much like he's getting more screen time than anyone else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. It's good because there's a lot of other characters that have, they got a lot going on. I have a lot that I want to say in the future about Raceland and Sturm specifically, because they get a lot of the foreshadowing in this first book, and it's just really like it's almost like, again, to use it like a D&D game, it's like these are the two characters whose players put the most effort into their backstories. Like Tanis's player came up with like character connections, right? Like things that connect them to different NPCs and PCs throughout the world. But like Sturm and Raceland, they gave the really detailed backstories that are just like about who the character is and what their goals are and what kind of person they are. And so like they have a lot of plot just circling around them at all times. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. And I'm excited to get there. So now they're in Xak Tsaroth, though. And they all have their sort of reactions as they start to sort of push away the vines and things, and they realize that they're actually there in the city. They kind of wander around for a little while to get to a courtyard. But and they're all kind of reacting their own way. I think they point out like the Lost Temple. Flint is like, the place is messy. Goldmoon's like, wow, that's beautiful. And Raceland's like, yeah, I guess. And like everybody's kind of having their moment. Do we know what they eventually find that is truly significant, though, Austin?
Oh, well, I mean...
Yes, that was it exactly. It was a well.
I mean,
yes, yeah, it was
well.
Well. Will's got a really good... Yeah, there we go. Will. No. Yeah, they find an ancient well outside of the temple, and I assume it has to be a really big well.
Yeah, and considering what's in it.
There's a Mines of Moria style well.
Yeah. Which makes sense because it was probably at one point in time serving a rather large urban population, right? So you probably had a lot of different people coming to it for water. And while they're sort of observing the well, a draconian sees them, and then they freak out. They expect to be attacked, but instead of attacking them, the draconian jumps into the well and glides down into the darkness. And that does not bode well for the party. Not long thereafter, they start to feel a sense of dread, primarily described through Tanis's perspective. And this, of course, for the D&D nerds, is what was known in second edition as dragon fear. The sort of the omnipresent sense of dread that accompanies the approach of any great draconic beast. And it is especially effective on Riverwind, who begins to suffer from his PTSD as he remembers death on Black Wings. And oh shit, it really was a dragon after all. Which is not surprising, considering
really gunning
the
for
name
it being
of the
a
book.
vampire.
Yeah. It's like, this is a book called Dragonlance about a world where there have not been dragons in a very long time. Look, a dragon. Basically, like, right as a Will, you wanna describe the dragon who came out? You wanna get into that?
Oh, I'm not sure I can describe her that well. That was kind of
Austin, do you want to describe her?
I can try to find the page because I'm bad.
I'll describe her then. Okay, so out of the well came a dragon, a black dragon specifically, with the sort of the glistening scales and the white talons and the fiery red eyes. She emerges from the well, and even Tanis, again, because he's kind of a playboy. He's a bit awestruck by how beautiful she is in her dragon form. I'm just saying he would go there. because that's who he is, and that will be revealed later in the books. His particular way with women. But one thing that I thought was really cool, actually, is that as she flies out and they all panic and freak out and are having this moment of like, get away from the well. We see that she casts a spell, which is an interesting opening salvo for a dragon in Dungeons and Dragons. She casts darkness to sort of make it difficult for everyone to see. And as magical darkness falls, this was something I did not remember, but I am a big fan of this dragon, and so I thought it was super cool. We suddenly get a paragraph of narration from her perspective, where she's like, well, I guess I can't see them very well through the darkness, but they haven't had enough time to move, so I should be able to get them in one pass. I'm like, it's so interesting to me that they would dip into her perspective all of a sudden when we haven't done that with any other sort of like negatively themed or antagonistic characters. And it suggests to me that I don't think it says anything about her importance as a character, but I do think it says something about her as being like maybe like a favorite. Like she's the very first dragon we see. She's got to be important, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe it might even have just been that like they really thought through her strategy here, and if they just described it from the player's perspective, then
in the darkness.
Yeah. Like they were just like, oh, there's darkness and then there's fire. It might not have made the most sense. All the individual pieces of the plan and the strategy might have been lost on the reader.
That is a good point. And I do want to believe that she's a favorite, though, just because she's probably my favorite Dragonlance NPC. Like absolutely my favorite. And I have not run a version of this adventure where one of the players was really, really intent on establishing a lesbian relationship with her. But you can learn a lot about this dragon actually in one of the side novels, the Dragonlance Villains series, entitled The Black Wing by Mary Kirchhoff. It's very, very good. Anywho, the dragon flies up. She has her moment, and she spits all over them. She has her traditional black dragon breath weapon of acid, which she sprays everywhere. And when the darkness clears, everyone is okay except for one person.
And it's real bad.
Do we know who that one person was? Not great.
There was a little restraint with how bad the village was described. There was no restraint whatsoever with just how incredibly melted Riverwind is. I was kind of this is marketed to children.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a horrifying image. Like,
oh yeah, it was uncomfortable to read.
Yeah, and clearly uncomfortable for the companions because they are pretty set on mercy killing him once they realize that not only is he like melted, but he's not fully dead yet. And it's Sturm who's about to do the deed when all of a sudden Goldmoon tells them to bring her to him. Or bring him to her, rather. Something that none of them want to do because they want to spare her the sight of her newly liquefied boyfriend. Except for Raceland, of course, because he's Raceland, and he's like, we should totally show her this.
He's gonna be sick.
This is gonna be great. And that's it for the chapter. The Black Dragon attacks. Kisanth attacks. She spits acid all over them. And then she presumably goes back into the well, just thinking that they're all dead, which is that classic dragon vanity. There's no way she could have failed.
Yeah, she's a dragon.
Yeah.
Verges mortals.
Mm-hmm. And that brings us to chapter 16, which is probably where I would say chapter 16 is where that, like, all that action now we're getting that, we're on the other side of that curve now, right? We're starting to dip back down into slightly less intense, less dramatic territory. but nevertheless super important. Again, Tanis goes to speak with Goldmoon, and he tries to explain to her what's happened, and she just like, shush, bring him to me. And then we are given a flashback of what Goldmoon was doing during the attack in the magical darkness. Would either of you like to talk about what that was?
Sure.
Yeah.
So she enters the temple, and she hears the voice of her mother, who died when Goldmoon was very young. It hears from her mother, is comforted by her mother, and is then subsequently introduced by her mother to a goddess.
A goddess. Their goddess.
Do we have a canon pronunciation on the name of this goddess, by the way? I know how it's pronounced in the Dragonlance movie.
I believe the way it's pronounced in the movie is going to be correct.
In the movie, it's Mishakel.
Yeah. Mishakel.
Which is not how I pictured it growing up, but that's going to be true of a lot of the pronunciation. I always thought of it as like Mishakel. That always sounded like, that sounded like the personality of this goddess to me, but Mishakel is probably the one.
Yeah, for me it was always Mishakal, but it is in fact Mishakel. Or it could be Mishakel or Meshakel. Either way, the shock is the emphasized syllable there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is weird, but
a little bit, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yes, she's introduced to Mishakel, who basically kind of tells her that her feelings are valid because Goldmoon is having some complicated feelings at that moment when she realizes how much danger her boyfriend is in and her friends are in. She has some inner narrative where she reveals that she's actually 30 years old, which is crazy. Because everyone else in the party is pretty young still, as far as I know. Everyone in the party, I'm pretty sure it's like in their 20s, early 20s.
Yeah. I
did not realize that Goldmoon was like in her 30s and apparently childless, something that she is concerned about, which I guess makes sense.
In medieval times, your clock really would be ticking to have a child, if that's something you're worried about.
Especially if you come from a village, right, where you're like, I guess, like expected to probably perpetuate your family line of nobility.
She probably had like 10,000 people propose to her, and she said, "No, Riverwind, he'll be back any moment now. Any moment. It's been 10 years. Any moment."
Yeah. So Mishakel's like, "No, don't worry about it. You feel your feelings. They're valid. The gods, we haven't been around, but then Mishakel is like, but it's not our fault." But and she tells she gives Goldmoon some direction for those feelings, though. She tells her that her purpose is basically seems to be to bring religion back to Kryn as a sort of a messenger for the gods, a cleric, as it were, and then explains to her that deep in the ruins of Xak Tsaroth is another religious artifact of Mishakel's, the so-called discs of Mishakel, of something about which we know nothing.
Indeed.
But yeah, and then Goldmoon, now sort of, I guess, newly ordained directly by her god, returns to goes to Riverwind and heals him.
Yeah, there was kind of a
completely.
Moment. There was kind of a moment though where she was like, yeah, I know Riverwind's hurt, and she's very stoic about it, like, bring him forward. Oh my god!
Yeah. She wasn't quite ready for it, right? Like, it was real bad.
Nobody is. Like, oh, that is...
Yeah. Because she didn't even know how he died, right? Like, she did not know how they were being attacked. No one said acid to her.
Like, he's hurt, and she just like has this full confidence.
She's
like,
like,
don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah.
She's not stressed. She can make it better. And then what she was prepared for something, but she wasn't prepared for that.
She did not.
Anybody?
She did not order the soup. But then she lays the staff on him and heals him, and he's all good again. And apparently, even right up until that moment, they all thought that she was going to be the one to deliver like the final mercy blow. But like, nah, she brings him back. And I was actually glad because I think in previous readings I had missed the whole like he's still alive bit. And because for years I was always like, man, Gold Moon uses it to bring someone back from the dead, but that's not a thing it can do in the game. But apparently it didn't.
Should have just read closer, huh?
Yeah, I should have. No, she just cast like
just
three slots of cure critical wounds on him or something like that. And heals him. And they're reunited, and it's wonderful. Wow. And so then they camp in the temple, where she tells them the story of Mishakal while they have dinner. Anything else happen in that temple, Austin? You had mentioned a helmet earlier.
Well, so Flint finds a helmet with allegedly a griffin feather, and I believe it's a griffin feather because why wouldn't it be?
Griffin hair.
Griffin hair. Sorry, griffin hair.
Yes.
I can't remember who said, yeah, but griffins aren't real, to which, again, somebody responded, well, neither were dragons.
I actually vaguely think it's Tass, which seems out of character for Tass, but, you know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
Tasslehoff likes to, if it was Tass, he likes to rib Flint a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, and that helmet is something that they rib him over, I think, for, like, all 3 books.
Oh, now
Pretty
you've
much
triggered core memories in me. Yes,
yeah. Because Flint, the sole reason Flint has for insisting that it's griffin hair is that he is not having an allergic reaction to it, because he is convinced that he's allergic to horses, which my interpretation has always been that this is that everyone else is right, that it's horsehair, and that Flint just kind of has convinced himself of an allergy that he doesn't have because he's afraid of horses. But I could be wrong. Maybe it's griffin hair after all. Who knows?
I'm not gonna argue against him. He knows his body.
That's fair. You know what? That's fair. After the helmet is found, there is a brief discussion. Do we remember what they discussed? Tanis and Flint and everybody else?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, so they have to find some magical discs.
Well, yes, they do. But they were also talking about the nature of faith.
Yes.
Because one of the things that Mishakal reveals is that it wasn't the gods who turned their backs on man, but man who turned their backs on the gods. And of course, in old 1970s, 1980s, and earlier fantasy, man is a shorthand for humanity. And Tanis and Flint are both kind of like, well, you know, like Flint is like, well, the elves and the dwarves didn't turn our backs on the gods. We've been worshiping them forever. And Tanis is like, have we though? Have we really? Or have we just been like crying out to them to come back to us? Like, has there been like a real act of devotion and love?
I think, I will say that, I respect almost every piece of the Dragonlance world building, but I think the gods say that we abandoned them always came off to me as the weak link, even as a teenager.
A little bit,
I just started to think of the semantics of like, okay, healing magic is gone. Did the cleric who never gave up on their god trying to save like a child dying of cancer, and the gods were like, well, you abandoned me.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's like a thing where like, I guess what I think the conclusion we're supposed to draw is that like the cataclysm and the disappearance of the gods are meant to be separate events that happened simultaneously, right?
Yeah, the like corrupting of religion led to the cataclysm, but it was like a separate thing.
Yeah, like the people's reaction to the cataclysm, like the reaction the gods were hoping for was, I guess, like, now that they've destroyed this city, the city of Ishtar and so on, like they were hoping that then the people would, through this great tribulation, their faith would be renewed. But that's not what happened. I guess people were like, screw you, and stopped worshiping them or something. But
they were either angry or desperate for the gods to come back when they really should have been humbled and started listening again.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that context, it sort of makes sense. I will say this, because this is my pet world building topic, Will, when it comes to, like, you know, the cleric trying to heal the child of their cancer. If you're a divine being and you've got this, like, I guess we'll call it a political motivation to stay separate to not interact with the mortals, right? Because you're not doing it, the other gods aren't doing it, no one's doing it. You got a delicate peace to maintain in this new situation. But obviously, the afterlife still exists, right? And so presumably, mortals are still being delivered to the afterlife. Goldmoon's mother was there with Mishakal. Does it really matter? If in the long run, like, to
do some pretty fucked up shit with that logic,
I know, in the real world, yes, but in a fantasy world where it's actually true,
they could do the same fucked up shit, but with magic.
Yeah, but if it's true, though, like, if it's like, well, the goddess would be like, well, that child will be suffering, but they'll be in my bosom soon. I know, but in the fantasy world, it's true.
Yeah, but so does in the world of a cult leader, it's true, M.
No, it's not.
They say it is. They believe it to be true.
But no. Look.
They believe it's true.
No. Look, the thing that makes, let's say, the destruction of the Cathars in French history, the thing that makes that awful, the moment where the guy's like, this is where we get the phrase, kill them all, God will know his own, right? What makes that horrible is the fact that we cannot know if the cosmological, if the foundation of that argument is real. That's what makes it horrible.
Listen, you and I know that these people don't know, but they are certain that they know. So for all intents and purposes, they are living in a world where they know that, and they are acting ethically and logically by allowing or encouraging children to die. Pretty fucked up,
But objectively, as people from the outside, we know it's fucked up. That's what I'm saying. It's our judgment call. I'm saying we shouldn't judge the gods too harshly if they have a paradise waiting for the poor sickly child.
Because they're in the Manson family, you're right.
It's heal the child and let them live a horrible life. And you know what?
Yeah, but we don't know what's on the other side, Em. It could not be any better over there than it is on the prime material plane.
It's pretty good.
This, though, is a big part of Dragonlance, especially in this first book, is all these discussions about the nature of faith. And something I discussed in, I think, episode 2 that I wanted to revisit, now was kind of when I wanted to start revisiting it, which is that I think that Dragonlance very much takes the view that religion is fundamentally a positive force in people's life when it is based on truth. But when it is based on lies, it is universally harmful, worthless, and damaging.
I feel like I would even go a little bit further and say it's not just about truth and lies, but also about like altruism and like sort of versus like self-aggrandizement, I guess, or like self-empower, like selfish goals, right? Whatever the opposite of altruism is. And we'll see that quite often. I heard more beeping. Will, you still
Did we
there?
lose someone? I'm still here.
It's Austin. We lost Austin.
No, I'm still here.
That's so weird.
I don't see Austin.
Prime will. Am I not
it's
here?
because you're the big screen. You're the big screen. That's why. Okay. That's what the CH is for. Okay, I got you now. It's for co-host. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's but I guess, you're right in the sense of it being lies because like the forces will eventually see the religious forces on the side of evil are often lying to the people who are serving them, right? They're very deceptive about the goals. Ultimately, it's very selfish at every level. And you can't be as selfish as they are without just using people. And that is kind of a terrible lie.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also in a way, and I'm using words very specifically here. It's anti-faith in a sense, not anti-religion, but anti-just believe religion. It's it's very much about like you need to find the real thing to believe, and you need to worship it with all your might and genuinely and everything. And I am not religious at all, but this kind of stance of like, you can't just be blindly religious, you need to find the truth, I do find an admirable approach to religion.
Yeah, it needs to be sought out. The god, the whole arc of Dragons of Autumn Twilight ultimately is like seeking out, at least up till this point, is seeking out the gods, right? They went, the people find them because some people finally went looking, right? And whereas I guess before that, nobody had gone looking, which is kind of the irony of the Seekers movement, the sort of the false priests of these false gods that don't actually exist. They call themselves Seekers, but they weren't actually looking for the gods. They just made stuff up.
They just kind of picked some stuff and said, everyone follow what I'm doing.
Yes, you must believe this now because we have political power here in Haven. And whereas like finally these teenagers were just like, yeah, we're going to go looking for the real gods. And sure enough, I mean, they found them. They didn't find them on their little quests, but they found their way back to Solus at the right moment for the gods to find them. So
indeed,
maybe that's yeah. It actually kind of reminds me of this is a total aside, but one of my favorite movies, Wrist Cutters, A Love Story.
Love that movie.
Which is set it's so good. It's set in an afterlife,
right.
And one of the characters is looking for the people in charge, and she's criticized by another character who says, like when you were alive, like did you go looking for God? And she was like, well, no, I didn't have a reason to. And it's very much like that for me, I think. Like, yeah, like that sense of you're never gonna find it if you're not looking for it. Anything that you try to summon up is always just going to come from inside of you instead of something that's outside of you, which can be good for certain religious type movements. But in this context, it's a bit different.
Indeed. We have run a little long, sense. So maybe we should probably wrap
you
things up here.
You can cut out a lot of that. Jesus Christ.
I think I'll keep it. People did not mind the longer episode last time. So before we start splitting off and everything,
let's put Austin in charge of the next one because I will.
Oh God, nobody wants that.
I am such a yapper. I will go on forever. I will.
Nobody wants that. I'm terrible.
Co-host is about to become prime host. So before we chat too much, I think how are we feeling about finishing up to the end of book 1? This next thing, and by that I don't mean the end of Dragons of Autumn Twilight,
right?
I mean by the end of it's called book 1 and book 2 within this novel. I think we can reach the end of book 1. It's a little bit steep in terms of how much is in there, but there's kind of just know where to stop in this next section.
Yeah, of course you'd make me have to host that part on Monsters.
Mm-hmm. It's a few chapters. It's a little bit. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not that much actually.
About what we did in this episode.
Yeah. It's like 50.
Yeah.
It's like 60 pages, something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm mostly giving y'all a hard time.
Yeah. Let's go all the way. All the way to book 2, I think so, and then that'll be great. Ooh, the
Sounds
art
good.
on that book 2 page, though, my God.
So then, we'll get this thing wrapped up and out of here. Where can everyone find everyone?
They can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/U or C or whatever completely unnecessary letter they make you put in a URL for a user on YouTube. Hauntie Games and also Hauntie. Both channels are actually going to be getting updates very soon. Or you can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky as Hauntie.
Amazing. Austin, they can find you on Blue Sky. Tell them about your new profile picture.
So how that profile picture came to be, I was reading the other day, and my very adorable cat, Scoppy, was offended on the fact that I was attempting to read. So dug himself between me and the book, and I managed to snap a picture, and then M decided, hey, I'm going to make this so much more adorable and amazing, and that's my new profile picture.
Yeah, just Scoppy reading.
Scoppy reads books. It is funny, he is the cat I mostly read to.
And myself you can find on the William SRD YouTube channel, where all fine William SRDs are purveyed.
He's the reason for the season.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We'll wrap things up. We won't waste any more of your time. Goodbye.
Farewell. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Good night, y'all.